Joining me now is the person who operates this anti-work group, Doreen Ford. All right, so Doreen, why do you like the idea of being home, not working, but still getting paid by corporate America? So Doreen, you're not being forced to work. This isn't slave labor. You've applied for a job. You've agreed to the terms and conditions of the employment. And, you know, you can walk away from that job at any time and quit. So what do you think is like a good work day? How many hours is you know, a solid work day in your ideal society? What do you do, Doreen?
I'm a dog walker.
A dog walker. Okay.
Yes.
And how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure, I'm 30.
You're 30. Okay. And is there something you want to do besides being a dog walker? Do you aspire to do anything more than dog walking, or is that kind of your pinnacle?
So Fox News did this interview with one of the moderators from the r/anti-work subreddit. Now for starters, I just want to say that this person didn't really say anything that was like out there. It's clear at this point that the Fox host was just being needlessly mean to them. Because like, for example, this person is a dog walker. Dog walking is a perfectly fine job. In fact, it's actually like a real job that involves like a ton of physical labor, and managing dogs can be a lot. It can be very stressful. Meanwhile, Jesse Waters is a Fox News host who's making tons of money and has an entire team of professionals that are there to make him look good, both in terms of writers and in terms of people like hair and makeup. Their whole job is just to make sure that Jesse Waters looks good on camera and sounds good no matter what he's saying. So him coming after this person for dog walking when he's like a news host, like, come on, buddy. But there are really two big points that I think are important to take away from this interview. The first one is understanding why Fox News invites people onto their show, especially why they invite left-wingers onto their show. Basically, the left-wingers they invite on their show end up falling into one of three categories. The first category are people who are just your average person who care about the world and have some ideas about it. And Fox News responds by pulling the rug out of under their feet, attacking them as an individual, and basically talking as fast as they can and asking as many questions as possible to confuse that person and try to make them look bad. If the things that they're saying sound fine, then they just turn to attacking random characteristics of this person. And in this instance, it was attacking the fact that this person is a dog walker, which once again is a very normal job. The second category of people are people who publicly claim to be leftists and do so for the viewership and the clout, but aren't actually leftists and haven't bothered to study really any of the theory. We're talking about people who run around calling themselves leftists and spread like anti-vax propaganda or spreading like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. These people are just incredibly grifty, and really they exist off of being cringe and then other people covering how cringe they are. That's how they get their attention. That's how they get the money that they earn from views. And then when those people go on Fox News, they're sort of both part of that game. Whether or not that person knows it or not, their job is to show up and be cringe so that the Fox News can say, oh, look, the left is very cringe. Sometimes the leftists that they bring on know that that's what their job is, and sometimes they're just doing that accidentally. Now, the third category are people like this.
Well, it works by you taking their dirty money. It's as easy as that. I mean, you are a millionaire funded by billionaires. That's what you are. And I'm glad you now finally jumped the bandwagon, you know, of people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. But you're not part of the solution, Mr. Carlson. You're part of the problem, actually.
They're the people who show up and never get invited ever again. Why do they never get invited ever again? Because they say the things that you're not supposed to say on Fox News. They point out the fact that these Fox News hosts are pretty much just millionaires defending billionaire. That these Fox News hosts really are just scapegoating marginalized people instead of talking about the real structural problems that exist in the United States of America. Their whole job is to distract and disorient people as to what exactly the problem is. And so if they have somebody that comes on and points that out, then they really don't want to air those interviews. And they will never invite those people on ever again. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you're randomly getting invited on a Fox News, my first advice would be to not go on. Because if they're inviting you on, that means they think that they can get something of value from you, and you should immediately be suspicious about that. But if you're not willing to take that advice, then at least understand that your goal when you go in should be to not get invited back, which means calling out these Fox News hosts for exactly who they are and don't really worry about paying too much attention to the questions that they're asking you. Get your points across. Make sure that people know what you want them to hear. And then make sure that you're pointing out the grift that these Fox News hosts are doing. Of course, you're not going to get invited again, but that's okay. If you get invited to Fox News, they're not going to invite you again if you did a good job advocating for these leftist positions, as a general rule. We have to remember, especially before we criticize this person that did this interview, it is incredibly stressful to be live in front of millions of people. And of course, there's a certain degree of awkwardness and uncomfortableness that happens when you're not used to being on camera, and then all of a sudden you are in front of a ton of people. So really, the person that did this interview, I think, did a fine job, or as fine job as anybody could do that doesn't have a ton of media training or experience. Now, the second takeaway from this, I think, is also really important, because there are some critiques to be said about what this person said in this interview. I think there are a few points where they miss some things that you could say if you had a deeper understanding of like leftist theory. And to that, I think it's this big problem in the United States where people are trapped by Cold War propaganda. A lot of Americans who consider themselves leftists actively reject the notion of studying the works of other leftist leaders in the world, because the Red Scare has led people to believe that they're just, oh, these scary, purely evil monsters, when in reality, they're human beings. And they had a lot of experience actually building states that were built off of leftist principles. So it makes sense to study the writings of people like Lenin and Mao, to study the history of Fidel Castro and Thomas Sankara, and understand why they said what they said, and what the general structures of the theory are. So when somebody comes up to you and asks you, well, what is the ideal amount of work that we should be doing in society? You can reply with, well, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need, which means that our working hours should really be determined by ourselves and our own level of comfort and abilities, and that we should make sure that everybody has their basic necessities taken care of, no matter how much or how little work they're capable of. And you can see from that how just having a little bit of Marxist theory can really help your arguments for yourself. Even if you're not a Marxist, understanding the theory is important to understanding these ideas more broadly. So to all the people who have been brought into the left by the movement of Bernie Sanders and AOC, I would just highly encourage you to look in the history of leftist political leaders and try to understand how these general theories might be relevant to the United States today, so that if you ever are in a position like this, you will know exactly what to say.
This is Ben Carollo with Rebel Headquarters. You can catch my show Galaxy Brain on the Young Turks Twitch channel every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to stay up to date with my content, you can follow me at Benjamin Carollo on Twitter. And for those of you that might be wondering or have noticed, my pronouns are in fact she, her.